a teary farewell as a young woman whispers, "I'll come back for you someday," before vanishing into the night. The town of Hollow Creek was the kind of place where time slowed down, where memories lived in the cracks of old sidewalks and the whispers of wind through sycamore trees. It was here, under the dim glow of a rusted train station lamp, that Elena Walker and Daniel Hayes first learned what it meant to say goodbye when it hurt the most. They weren't just high school sweethearts. They were bound by years of friendship, of scraped knees and firefly summers, of hidden letters passed in classrooms and the kind of trust only childhood can forge. Their love had grown quietly, tucked between schoolbooks and dreams about the future. It was gentle, pure, and completely unprepared for the force of what was coming. It happened fast. Elena's father, a contractor stationed overseas, had fallen critically ill. Her mother, already frayed at the edges, demanded they leave immediately, no arguments, no delays. There was no time for packing memories, no moment to plan farewells. Just one final night and the train that would steal her away before morning. She didn't want to say goodbye at the house. It would have made things feel too permanent. So she sent Daniel a note, asking him to meet her at the station. It was raining that night. Not a violent storm, just a soft drizzle that soaked through jackets and settled into bones. Daniel stood under the flickering platform light, his hands clenched in his coat pockets, heart pounding louder than the arriving train. He'd never seen her look so pale or so scared. She tried to speak, but the words caught behind her teeth. "I don't want to go," she finally whispered. "Then don't," he said almost childishly, as if wanting it badly enough would stop the train from coming. But life wasn't kind to boys who made wishes on things they couldn't control. Elena looked at him, her eyes glassy and shimmering. "I have to," she said, "but I'll come back for you someday." It wasn't a promise said loudly. It wasn't meant to be brave. It was a threadbare vow sewn between heartbeats, held together by tears and hope. Daniel didn't speak as she stepped onto the train. He couldn't. His throat had closed up, his lungs barely moving. He watched the doors shut, watched her silhouette through the glass, watched the train roll forward and vanish into the misty night. Then he stayed. For hours. The platform emptied. The rain picked up. But Daniel stood there, soaking, still believing that maybe she'd return before the sun came up. That maybe it was all a mistake. That people don't just disappear like that. But Elena did. Days passed, then weeks, then months. He tried writing. No response. Tried calling. The number was disconnected. The Walkers had vanished into some foreign country and left no trace behind. No one in town knew where they'd gone or how long they'd be gone. Eventually, people stopped asking. But Daniel never did. He kept her memory alive the way grieving people do, by folding it into his routines. He would drive by her old street without realizing it. He kept her favorite song saved in his car, though he couldn't bring himself to play it. He stopped going to the train station, then started again, then stopped. Time dragged him forward. He got a job at his uncle's hardware store. Started dating a girl named Claire who everyone said was good for him. He played along, smiled in photos, attended dinner parties, laughed when he was supposed to. But part of him always stayed on that platform that rainy night, staring into the distance where the train had taken her. He never told Claire about Elena, not really. Just a vague mention once, brushed off like a childhood crush. But deep down, he knew that no one had ever replaced her. No one could. She had become part of his DNA, a quiet ache that never fully dulled. Then one summer morning, 12 years later, a bus rolled into Hollow Creek. There was no announcement, no buzz in town. Just a quiet hiss of brakes and a cloud of dust as the doors swung open. Daniel, now older, more composed, happened to be across the street fixing a broken sign outside his shop. He barely glanced at the bus. No one interesting ever arrived on that route. Until he saw her. The world seemed to fall silent as Elena stepped down onto the sidewalk. Her hair was darker now, her clothes plain. She carried a worn bag and a tired look in her eyes. But it was her. After all this time, after silence that spanned over a decade, she had returned, unannounced, unchanged, and unexplained. Daniel dropped the wrench in his hand. He didn't move. Couldn't. Elena looked around the town slowly, like she was seeing ghosts in every brick, every lamppost, every porch swing. Her eyes drifted across the street and met his. Time stopped. 12 years of questions collided in a single glance. Why had she come back now? What had kept her away? Did she still remember the promise? Or was she here to break it all over again? And then she looked away, as if she had no intention of speaking to him. He's engaged now, but the woman he once loved just walked back into town. 12 years change a lot in a small town. Buildings grow older, families move, shops close and reopen under new names. The streets look the same but carry different stories now. Some whispered, some buried. Elena noticed the differences immediately. The town had a new pharmacy. The local movie theater had been turned into a boutique. And the old bookstore where she used to meet Daniel after school had become a fitness center. But the biggest change wasn't in the buildings. It was in him, Daniel Hayes. She spotted him on her second day back. He was stepping out of a black SUV in a tailored gray shirt, phone pressed to his ear, forehead creased in conversation. He looked nothing like the boy she left behind. He looked like a man who knew exactly who he was and where he was going. There was confidence in his step, strength in his voice. But something about his eyes still looked familiar. That quiet melancholy he carried even when he smiled. Elena stood across the street, half hidden behind the rusted window frame of her temporary apartment. Her hands trembled slightly. She wasn't ready to be seen, not by him. Not yet. She didn't know how to explain her absence, let alone the reasons that still clawed at her in the dark. He had moved on. Of course he had. People had whispered enough for her to know. Daniel Hayes was no longer just a local boy. He was now the co-owner of one of the biggest construction firms in the county. He sat on the town's planning board. He donated to local charities, and most notably, he was engaged. Claire Brighton. The name made Elena pause the first time she heard it at the diner. Claire was everything Elena was not. Polished, born into wealth. The daughter of a real estate mogul who saw Daniel as the perfect candidate to expand their family legacy. She'd grown up in the city but bought herself a place in Hollow Creek when her father opened development contracts here. It didn't take long before she and Daniel were seen at every town function together, dressed in symmetry, perfectly paired. Elena listened quietly as two women in the booth behind her gossiped about Claire's upcoming engagement party. How the ring was worth more than most people's houses. How the wedding planner had already flown in from New York. How Claire had refined Daniel, shaped him into something respectable. Respectable. That word stung more than Elena cared to admit. She had taken a job at the diner under a different last name. Elena Walker now. Just until she figured out what she was really doing here. Just until she figured out how to breathe in the same air as Daniel without being consumed by everything they used to be. No one recognized her. Not yet. 12 years had a way of softening features, adding shadows to once bright eyes. Her hair was longer now, dyed darker, her voice quieter. She kept her head down, worked the early shifts, poured coffee, memorized the menu, avoided eye contact. But every day she found herself glancing toward the window, toward the street, toward the life that used to be hers. Daniel hadn't seen her. Not really. They'd locked eyes once, from a distance. But he'd looked away too quickly, like his mind couldn't place her. Or maybe he didn't want to. Then came Wednesday. Lunch rush. It was supposed to be like any other day. Elena was refilling napkin holders at the front counter when the doorbell jingled and a wave of perfume and laughter swept in. Claire Brighton walked in like she owned the world. She wore a cream-colored trench coat over a silk blouse, diamond earrings glinting in the sunlight. Her heels clicked sharply on the tile, heads turned, Even the cook in the back peeked through the service window. Elena stiffened. She recognized her instantly from newspaper photos, from the framed articles on the construction firm's wall, from the way the town talked about her with either admiration or quiet resentment. Claire moved with the ease of someone who had never been told no. She took a seat by the window, opened a leather-bound planner, and began making a call. Elena's hands trembled slightly as she approached the table, her notepad clutched tightly in her palm. "Good afternoon. Welcome to Gracie's. Can I get you started with something to drink?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Claire looked up, clearly distracted. Then her eyes focused, paused, froze. For a brief moment, the room seemed to go silent. Claire stared at Elena like she was staring at a ghost. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Her eyes narrowed, searching the face in front of her for confirmation. Elena's heart thundered. She offered a polite, blank smile, the kind you give strangers. She prayed it would be enough, but it wasn't. Claire knew she might not have had the full story yet. She might not have known the name or the details, but the look in her eyes said it all. Recognition, threat, calculation. Claire didn't order anything. She simply closed her planner, stood slowly, and gave Elena a smile that didn't reach her eyes. And just before turning to leave, she spoke in a voice low enough only for Elena to hear. "You're back." Elena didn't respond. Couldn't. She just watched as Claire walked out the door, her heels clicking like warning shots across the floor. Claire walks into the diner and locks eyes with Elena. Daniel hears a name he swore he buried. Elena. For the rest of that day, Claire Brighton couldn't think straight. She was used to being in control of her image, her relationship, the narrative. But the woman she'd seen at the diner rattled something in her. A flicker of a memory, a resemblance too sharp to ignore. And one name kept echoing in her mind like a song she couldn't stop hearing. Elena. She hadn't said it aloud in years. Daniel never brought her up, not even once. It was like she didn't exist. Like she had been erased conveniently and permanently from the pages of his past. But Claire had seen enough. The shock in that woman's eyes. The hesitation in her voice. The way her hand trembled just slightly when she held the notepad. It wasn't just déjà vu. It was recognition. Claire didn't say anything to Daniel that night. Not at dinner. Not while they watched a documentary neither of them really cared about. Not even when they climbed into bed. But while Daniel slept beside her, Claire stared at the ceiling, wondering just how much of his heart she truly owned. The next morning, she made a quiet call to a friend at the town records office, asking for access to recent employment files. A new hire at Gracie's diner under the name Elena Walker. Local address, no family listed, no past employer. Practically a ghost. Claire didn't need more. She already knew. But Daniel remained unaware until that afternoon. He wasn't planning to stop by the diner. He was heading to the building site nearby when his stomach growled and he remembered he hadn't eaten all day. He pulled into the parking lot out of routine, thinking he'd just grab a sandwich and go. The diner was quiet, mid-afternoon slow. A few seniors at the corner booth, a couple with a toddler near the window. And behind the counter, her. He didn't see her face at first, just her profile, the curve of her jaw, the way her hair was tucked behind one ear. But then she turned, and his world tilted. He dropped his car keys on the counter. For a moment, Daniel thought he might be hallucinating. His brain raced through possibilities. Was this a dream? A cruel trick? Some stranger who just happened to look like the girl who left him without a word 12 years ago? Then she spoke. "Welcome to Gracie's. What can I get you?" Her voice, that voice, it hadn't changed. It was softer now, maybe, but still full of the same quiet music that used to pull him back from his worst days. His stomach knotted. "Elena?" She froze, just for a second, her lashes lowered, her hands moved slightly, but then she forced a confused smile. "I think you've mistaken me for someone else." "No," he said, stepping closer. "No, I haven't." He didn't mean to say her name out loud again. It came out like an involuntary breath, like muscle memory, like something sacred and forbidden all at once. She straightened her back and replied calmly, "I'm sorry, sir. I'm not who you think I am, sir." The word hit him harder than he expected. She was pretending not to know him. She was calling him sir. "Look at me," he said. But she turned away, reached for a coffee pot, avoided his eyes. A customer called her name, Elena, to ask for more napkins. She flinched. So did Daniel. He left without ordering. Back in his truck, he gripped the steering wheel like it might anchor him to the moment. He hadn't heard her name spoken out loud in over a decade. He had buried it, locked it in a box with every unanswered letter and every sleepless night. But there she was, alive, present, denying it. He couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't just passing through, that she had come back with purpose, that the story she wasn't telling might change everything. And worse, he realized he wasn't angry. He was confused, hurt, drawn, and something else. Still in love? Later that evening, after dinner with Claire, a dinner he barely tasted, Daniel made a decision. He drove back to the diner. It was closing time. The lights inside were dimming. One of the cooks stepped out the back door, nodding politely as Daniel parked his truck across the alleyway. Then he saw her. Elena emerged with her hair tied back, her purse slung over her shoulder, jacket in hand. She walked slowly, like her body carried more weight than it should, as if she felt eyes on her. Because she did. Daniel stepped out of the shadows. She stopped immediately. Their eyes met again. No counter between them this time. No other voices. Just silence, heavy and thick. "Why are you pretending not to know me?" he asked. Elena didn't speak at first. Her expression shifted from surprise to resolve in the space of a heartbeat. "I'm not pretending," she said finally. "I'm someone else now." "You can't be someone else. You're Elena. You said you'd come back. I didn't say when." His breath caught. She was admitting it. 12 years. No letters, no explanation. And now she stood before him, not even trying to offer one. "I waited," he said, voice low. "I waited longer than I should have. I know. You just disappeared. I had to. Why?" Elena glanced away toward the edge of the alley where the streetlights barely touched. Her eyes shimmered in the dark, but she didn't cry. "Because staying would have broken more than just my heart." Daniel took a step forward. "Then tell me what really happened." She shook her head. "Not here. Not now." "When?" "I don't know." "Why did you come back?" "I don't know that either." Her voice cracked then, just slightly. And for the first time, Daniel saw behind the mask. The exhaustion, the fear, the years of silence wrapped around something fragile. He wanted to ask more, wanted to shake answers out of her. But all he could do was stand there, watching the only woman he'd ever truly loved look like a stranger, wrapped in 1,000 unspoken truths. She turned to leave. He didn't stop her, but he didn't let her go either. Daniel follows her after work, confronting her on a quiet street. "You didn't even write once. Why now?" The night air was thick with tension as Elena walked quickly down the side street, her footsteps echoing across the cracked pavement. Street lamps flickered above, casting faint halos of yellow on the sidewalk. She wrapped her jacket tighter around her body, trying to steady her breathing, but it was no use. She knew he was behind her. "Why did you come back, Elena?" His voice cut through the silence, low but sharp. Daniel had followed her from the diner, his footsteps quiet but deliberate. She didn't turn around. "Not yet. I told you. I had my reasons." "That's not an answer," he said. "You didn't even write once. Why now?" She stopped. Elena turned to face him, the dim glow of the street lamp catching the pain etched across her face. Her eyes weren't angry. They were tired, haunted. "You think I didn't want to?" she said quietly. "You think I didn't try?" "Did you?" He stepped closer, his expression unreadable. "Because I remember waiting. Every day. I checked the mail for weeks, months. I thought maybe something happened to you. Then I thought maybe I'd done something wrong, and then—" He exhaled sharply. "I just gave up. I buried you." Elena swallowed hard. She wasn't ready for this, not so soon. She'd barely begun to understand her own reasons for returning, and now the weight of the past was pressing down on her all over again. "My mother was dying," she said finally. Daniel blinked. She had cancer. Stage 4. It was sudden, aggressive. My father took a job in Istanbul to cover the treatments. We moved overnight. There wasn't time to explain anything. And once we got there, everything fell apart. "You could have written," he said again, but his voice had softened. "One letter, one message. I tried." "Once," she said, looking away. "My father found it, tore it up. He said I had to forget you, that clinging to anything back home would only make it harder for me to take care of her." Daniel looked down at his hands, fists clenched at his sides. "So you just listened? Just erased me?" "I was 17, she snapped, the first crack in her composure showing. "I was a scared girl being pulled into a life I didn't choose. You have no idea what it was like, watching her die piece by piece while my father blamed me for every setback. I couldn't breathe, Daniel. I couldn't think about anything except surviving the next day." The silence between them stretched long. He believed her. At least part of him did. But the wound was too deep, the years too long. The betrayal still lingered like smoke in his lungs. "And what now?" he asked. "You come back and— what? Pretend like none of it happened?" "No," she said, "I didn't come back for that." "Then why?" "I needed to see if this place still felt like home." Daniel shook his head slowly. "You can't just pick up where you left off, Elena. That's not how real life works." "I know," she whispered. For a moment, the only sound was the distant hum of traffic, the breeze rustling leaves overhead. "I'm engaged," he said, though he didn't know why he felt the need to remind her. "I know," she replied. "I saw her." He paused. "You don't approve?" "It's not my place to approve," she said carefully. "She's beautiful. She seems perfect." Daniel didn't answer that, because the truth was Claire was perfect in ways that looked good on paper. But now, standing here in front of the girl he thought he'd never see again, all of those neat, controlled pieces of his life felt artificial. "Did you ever think about me?" he asked suddenly. Elena's eyes met his, and for the first time that night her voice faltered. "Every day." That broke something in him. But before either of them could say more, the sound of a car engine down the street rumbled softly, then paused. Unseen behind tinted windows, Claire Brighton sat in the driver's seat of her sleek black Mercedes parked half a block away. She'd seen Daniel leave the house. She'd followed on a hunch. And now she sat watching the man she planned to marry standing far too close to a woman who hadn't existed. Until now. She didn't move. Didn't blink. The body language was enough, the tension, the history, the emotion. Her fingers tightened around the steering wheel. Her engagement ring caught the light, sparkling with a cruel irony. She knew now that something was unraveling, and she wasn't going to let it happen without a fight. Claire secretly watches the confrontation from her car. Daniel starts canceling wedding plans, and Claire isn't blind. Claire Brighton had always known how to read the room. It was how she had built her entire life, charming when needed, icy when strategic. She could dress a threat as a compliment and make betrayal sound like negotiation. It wasn't just about being beautiful, wealthy, or well-connected. Claire knew how to keep power in her hands. Until now. Ever since the night she saw Daniel standing with her, that woman, Elena, Claire had begun to feel something she hadn't in years. Instability. The kind of tremor that couldn't be explained away by spreadsheets or small talk. Something in Daniel had shifted. He didn't say much after that night, but that was the first sign. Daniel Hayes wasn't the silent type, especially not with her. The next morning she noticed he'd canceled a call with the wedding planner. Then he skipped the tasting with the caterers she had flown in from New York. Then the appointment with the tuxedo designer. All without explanation. One by one, things began to fall off the calendar. At first, Claire assumed he was just tired. Construction deadlines, budget issues. But by the end of the week, it was clear. He was distracted, he was distant, he was elsewhere. Meanwhile, Elena kept to herself at the diner. She avoided Daniel, took extra shifts, stayed in the back when she could. But even that wasn't enough. He showed up one afternoon, sat at the far end of the counter and just watched. Said he wasn't hungry. Said he just needed coffee. But Elena knew better. She felt his eyes like heat on her skin. She didn't say anything. And when he left, she found herself standing in the same spot for 10 minutes, trying to understand why her heart wouldn't slow down. Claire noticed the change in his eyes. She noticed the hesitation in his touch, the pauses in his sentences. One night over dinner, he complimented her dress, and she realized he wasn't looking at her when he said it. So she began retracing steps, backtracking conversations, trying to pinpoint the exact moment she lost control. She didn't like what she found. The truth was, Claire's engagement to Daniel had never been about romance, not entirely. It had started with convenience. Her father's company needed land access to expand the new development projects, and Daniel owned property they couldn't touch without a partner. Claire was sent to Hollow Creek to build relationships. She did exactly that. But somewhere along the way, Claire decided she wanted Daniel for herself. Not just the deal, not just the merger, the man. He was different from the artificial men she knew in the city. Honest, simple, grounded. And at first, he seemed to respond to her with the same intensity. They started dating. Then came dinners with the families, quiet engagement talks behind closed doors, a diamond ring, a joint investment in a new project. Now she was watching it all unravel. Claire didn't believe in coincidences. Elena's return wasn't just bad timing, it was a threat. So she called a name she hadn't used in a while, someone from her father's legal team who handled unofficial inquiries. She wanted to know everything about Elena Walker, where she lived, where she came from, what she was hiding, because Claire Brighton didn't lose, not without finding out what cards her opponent was holding. Back at the construction firm office, Daniel stared at the engagement board on the wall. Photos of venues, potential honeymoon spots, floral arrangements. He didn't recognize any of it anymore. The colors were Claire's. The menus were Claire's. Even the guest list was Claire's. He thought back to the night on the street with Elena. Her voice, her words. I had to survive. He hadn't stopped thinking about that. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't try to fix the past. She just stood there, raw and human, in a way he hadn't seen in a long time. It made everything else feel false. Claire walked into the office without knocking, holding her tablet like a sword. We need to finalize seating arrangements by Friday. He didn't look at her. Cancel the tasting. What? I'm not going. You've already canceled 2 meetings this week. I know. Daniel, she said sharply, what is going on with you? He finally met her gaze. There was something unflinching in his eyes. Not cruel, just honest. I don't know if this is what I want anymore. Claire went still. She didn't cry. Didn't flinch. Just narrowed her eyes slightly. You mean us? The wedding? I mean all of it. Her voice dropped low. Because she's back. Silence. That was her answer. Claire straightened. I see. He opened his mouth, but she held up a hand. No, don't bother. I get it now. You never really let her go, did you? I thought I had. Then go find out, she said coldly, but just know, if you walk away from this, it won't be clean. You're tied to my family now, you don't just get to disappear. He nodded once. I'm not trying to disappear. I'm trying to figure out what's real, Claire smiled bitterly. You'll regret looking. That night, Elena walked home from the diner, unaware of the eyes following her. A man in a dark sedan parked half a block behind, windows tinted, engine silent, taking photos, making notes. He sent a message to Claire. Found her apartment. Looks like she's using an alias. Want full background? Claire replied with one word. Yes. Claire hires someone to investigate Elena. Elena had a child and never told anyone. There were parts of Elena's past she had buried so deep even she struggled to revisit them. But some truths don't stay buried. It was early morning. The diner was still closed, the town still asleep, and in a quiet second-floor apartment above an old bookstore, a little girl with thick brown hair and thoughtful eyes stirred beneath a quilted blanket. Maya. Elena stood silently in the doorway, watching her daughter sleep, her breath even, her fingers curled against the pillow like she was holding on to a dream. 11 years old, sharp as a blade, gentle as a whisper, and unknowingly carrying the weight of a secret that could collapse everything Elena had carefully built. She'd always known this day might come. From the moment she held Maya for the first time, alone in a hospital in Istanbul, tears rolling silently down her face, Elena had been preparing for the moment the past would catch up to them. She had never told Maya about Daniel, not even a version of him. He was simply a gap, a blank space, a not now conversation she wasn't brave enough to have. In truth, Elena had found out she was pregnant just weeks after arriving in Istanbul. Her mother was still in treatment. Her father was unraveling. There was no room for joy, no celebration, only crisis. When she tried to tell him, her father erupted. "You're not going to ruin your life with some boy from nowhere," he had shouted, crushing the letter she'd written to Daniel before she could send it. So she kept quiet. She raised Maya in secret, worked late-night jobs, studied between feedings, moved through a foreign world with a baby in her arms and a fire in her chest. Maya had been her reason to survive, her reason to fight. And now, the reason she feared the truth more than anything. In the past few days, since seeing Daniel again, since feeling the echo of what they once had, Elena's mind had been a battlefield. Was it fair to hide Maya from him? Could he forgive her? Could Maya understand? She wasn't ready, not yet. But time wasn't on her side. Across town, the private investigator sat in a rented car parked beneath a weeping willow tree near Maya's school. He'd followed Elena for 3 days, quiet, precise, unnoticed. He wasn't from Hollow Creek. He didn't care about old love stories or small-town scandals. He cared about delivering information. He lifted the camera as Maya stepped off the school bus. She was laughing, walking beside a friend, lunchbox in hand. The man clicked the shutter, zoomed in. Even through the lens, it was obvious. She had Daniel's eyes. He didn't know the whole story. Didn't need to. He just sent the photos to Claire and waited for his next instruction. Back in her apartment, Elena was late for work. Maya sat at the kitchen table eating cereal, her sketchbook open beside her, feet swinging under the chair. "Mom?" she asked, not looking up. "Yeah, baby? Did you ever love someone before Dad?" Elena's spoon paused mid-air. The question caught her completely off guard. What do you mean?" Maya shrugged. "You never talk about him. It's like he was never there. Like I didn't come from anywhere." Elena walked over slowly, kneeling beside her. "You came from love," she said softly. "I promise you that. But why don't I know anything about him?" Elena looked into her daughter's eyes, so much like his, and felt her stomach twist. "Some things are hard to explain," she said gently. "But I'll tell you everything one day. I just need a little more time." Maya nodded slowly, but her expression said she wasn't satisfied. Neither was Elena. Later that afternoon, Daniel stood outside the construction office, phone in hand, scrolling through an email from the wedding planner. He didn't even open it. His thoughts were tangled, half with work, half with Claire's increasingly clipped tone at home, and all with her. He couldn't stop thinking about Elena, about the look in her eyes when she said she had to survive, about the things she hadn't said. What was she still hiding? And why did he feel like part of him already knew? That evening, as Maya drew quietly on the couch, Elena stood by the window watching headlights pass on the road below. She felt it in her bones. Something was shifting. The walls she had built to protect her daughter were trembling, and the truth she had hidden for 11 years was about to come knocking. Across town, Claire opened the folder the investigator had dropped off. She flipped through the photos slowly, methodically, her manicured fingers pausing on one particular shot. The girl, Maya. The resemblance was undeniable. Claire's jaw tightened. She knew what this meant, and now she had the leverage to destroy the fairy tale before it began. Claire's investigator snaps a photo of Maya. Claire confronts Elena with the photo. Blackmail begins. The photo landed face up on the diner counter with a sound louder than it should have made. Elena stared at it, heart stuttering in her chest, as the image slowly came into focus. A candid shot. Maya walking down the school steps, sunlight catching the ends of her hair. Alone, unprotected, targeted. Across the counter, Claire Brighton stood with arms crossed, a smile that never reached her eyes. The morning crowd hadn't yet arrived. The staff was in the back, and Elena was trapped. "Beautiful little girl," Claire said lightly. "She's what, 10? 11? Elena didn't respond. "I'm sure it was hard, raising a child alone. But you did it. She looks healthy, happy. You even changed your last name. Smart." Still, Elena said nothing. Claire's voice dropped lower. "You didn't tell him." "I don't owe you anything," Elena replied, her voice shaking. "No," Claire said, "but you owe him, and you're robbing him of a child. That's not love, Elena, that's selfish." Elena reached for the photo, but Claire slapped her hand down over it. "I'm not finished." Elena's eyes flickered, anger barely contained. "What do you want?" Claire leaned in. "I want you gone." The silence between them stretched into something sharp. "You're going to pack your things, take your daughter, and disappear again. This time for good. You think you can scare me?" "I don't need to," Claire said. "I'll just tell him the truth, that you lied, that you hid a child from him, that you've been playing a game since the moment you stepped off that bus. He'll never forgive you." Elena clenched her fists. "I didn't come here to ruin his life." "Then don't." Claire slid the photo back into her purse and straightened her jacket like a lawyer finishing a case. "You leave tonight, or I tell everyone. And your little secret? It'll be front-page gossip before sunrise." She turned to leave, then paused at the door. "You think he'll still look at you the same way once he knows?" Elena stood frozen long after Claire disappeared. She had prepared herself for this moment in theory, but in reality she was cracking. The weight of Maya's safety, Daniel's presence, and her own guilt, all crashing down. Back at the house, Claire poured herself a glass of wine and watched the sun set behind the garden patio. She was calm now, collected, certain, but she didn't see the crack beginning to form. Not in Elena's resolve, but in Daniel's trust. He had noticed Claire's behavior lately, the way she changed the subject when Elena came up. The late-night calls she claimed were about the wedding. The investigator's card he accidentally found in her desk drawer, marked with a name he didn't recognize. Something wasn't adding up. That evening, Daniel made a quiet decision of his own. He drove past the diner. It was closed. Then he circled the block until he saw Elena's apartment light glowing faintly on the second floor. He parked across the street but didn't get out. Not yet. Instead, he sat in silence, staring up at the window like it held the answer to a question he hadn't dared ask. Inside, Elena paced the living room, her fingers trembling as she gripped her phone. She had almost called him twice. But what would she say? "Hi, I lied to you for over a decade. You have a daughter, number." She couldn't do it. Not like this. She turned to Maya, who was sitting on the floor drawing horses in her sketchbook. "Hey, sweetheart," Elena said gently, kneeling beside her. If we needed to go away for a little while, would that be okay?" Maya looked up, puzzled. "Like a vacation?" "Something like that," But I just started making friends here. Elena's heart clenched. I know. I'm sorry Maya didn't respond. She just stared down at her drawing again, and Elena felt something inside her shatter. She didn't sleep that night. The next morning, Claire woke up to find Daniel already gone. She called him. No answer. She called again. Voicemail. Her chest tightened. Across town, Daniel pulled into the driveway of his mother's old cottage, the only place that still felt like neutral ground. He needed time, space, and distance from Claire's suffocating control. But as he stepped out of the truck, a sound stopped him cold. Small footsteps on the gravel behind him. He turned, and there she was. Maya, hair windblown, shoes untied, backpack half zipped. "Are you Daniel Hayes?" she asked, voice small but clear. His heart stopped. Yeah, he said. "Who are you?" "I'm Maya." Silence. "I got lost," she said. "I was looking for you." Maya shows up at Daniel's doorstep, lost. He has no idea she's his daughter, but feels something stir. Daniel crouched down slowly, eye level with the little girl standing in his driveway. Maya's backpack slipped from one shoulder, the zipper hanging open. Her eyes were wide but calm. There was no fear in them, just expectation. Like she already knew she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Daniel's heart thudded in his chest. "You said your name is Maya?" he asked gently. She nodded. "And you're looking for me?" Again she nodded. "Why?" Maya hesitated. "My mom talks about you sometimes. I think she's scared. I thought maybe you could help." Daniel blinked. "Who's your mom?" "Elena Walker." The name hit him like a punch to the chest. He looked over her shoulder, half expecting Elena to be racing down the street in panic. But no one was there, just the breeze stirring the trees, the stillness of morning, and this girl who couldn't be here. "She doesn't know I came," Maya added, quieter now. "I followed the diner van this morning, then I walked." Daniel exhaled slowly, trying to keep his voice steady. "You walked all this way?" It wasn't far, but it was, especially for a child, especially alone. He stood, rubbing the back of his neck. "Okay, let's get you inside." Maya followed him in without hesitation, like she belonged there. Inside, the house still smelled faintly of old wood and rain. Daniel hadn't been living there full-time, just using it to clear his head. But he found crackers in the pantry and a bottle of juice. Maya sat at the table, swinging her legs, studying the space. "You live here alone?" "Sometimes," he said. "I've got another place, but this is where I think better." She smiled. "It's quiet." He poured juice into a glass and placed it in front of her. "You said your mom talks about me?" "Not a lot, but sometimes. She says your name like it's a secret." Daniel felt something stir in his chest. A flicker, a thread pulled too tight. He sat down across from her. "How old are you?" 11. His breath caught. She didn't look exactly like Elena, but something in her expression, her stillness, her eyes. Those eyes, his stomach twisted. "You look familiar," he said carefully. Maya shrugged. "People say I look like my mom." He nodded slowly. "I can see that." But it wasn't Elena's face he was seeing now. It was someone else's, someone he hadn't dared imagine. The girl smiled at him, softly, easily. And something deep inside Daniel, something buried under layers of time and betrayal and distance, began to unfold. Meanwhile, across town, Elena's world was unraveling. She'd searched the entire block, checked the diner, called neighbors, walked the school route twice. Nothing. Maya was gone. Elena's hands trembled as she dialed her daughter's phone again. Straight to voicemail. Panic crawled up her spine like ice. Had Claire done something? Had Maya run because of their conversation? Her mind raced through scenarios she couldn't even bring herself to say out loud. Then finally a name floated to the surface. Daniel. She didn't want to believe it, but something told her, deep in her gut, that Maya had gone to find him. Back at the cottage, Daniel and Maya were sitting outside on the back steps, watching clouds shift across the late afternoon sky. She talked about school, about her favorite books, how she hated raisins but liked cinnamon, how her mom made the best pancakes in the world. He listened, mesmerized. He hadn't spent time with a child like this since his younger cousin's birthday years ago, but this felt different, natural, easy, like he was supposed to be there. "I like you," Maya said suddenly. Daniel smiled. "I like you too. You feel safe." He looked at her, really looked, and that flicker in his chest grew hotter. Before he could respond, a car came screeching up the gravel driveway. Elena. She jumped out before the engine fully stopped. "Maya!" The girl stood and ran toward her. "I'm sorry," she cried. "I didn't mean to scare you." "I just wanted to talk to him." Elena dropped to her knees and pulled her daughter close, holding her tightly. Relief washed over her face, mixed with fear and fury. She looked up, eyes meeting Daniel's. He was already on his feet, frozen. "What's going on, Elena?" She stood slowly, Maya still clinging to her. "Why didn't you tell me she was missing?" he demanded. "She said she came here alone." "She did." "I didn't know. I've been looking everywhere for her." He took a step forward. "She said she's 11. Elena said nothing. His jaw tightened. "Elena." She looked down at Maya, who had gone quiet, then back at him. Her lips parted, then closed. "I think I deserve an answer," Daniel said. And then, finally, he asked the question that had been growing inside him all day. Daniel asks Elena, "Who is this little girl? Really?" "She's yours. She always was." Daniel stood still, his arms stiff at his sides, his chest rising and falling in short, shallow breaths. His question still hung in the air like a storm cloud. "Who is this little girl? Really?" Elena opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Maya, now clutching her mother's hand, looked between them, her face etched with confusion. The wind picked up slightly, rustling the leaves around the old cottage. The stillness in Daniel's expression wasn't calm. It was the pause before impact. "Elena," he said again, slower now, firmer. "Who is she?" Elena looked down at Maya, her daughter, her secret, her consequence. Then finally she met his eyes. "She's yours," she whispered. "She always was." Silence. Daniel blinked. The words didn't land right away. He processed them the way someone processes the sound of breaking glass. Disbelief first, then panic. He stepped back. Maya, still too young to fully grasp what was happening, held tighter to her mother's side, sensing the tension but not the depth of it. Daniel shook his head. "No, that can't be. You would have told me. I wanted to." "When?" His voice cracked. "Before or after you vanished? Before or after I spent years thinking you were dead or worse, indifferent?" Elena's voice trembled. "I was 17, Daniel. My mother was dying. My father threatened to disown me if I reached out to you. I was scared, alone. I thought I could protect her by staying silent." "You thought silence was protection?" He was pacing now, hands clenching and unclenching at his sides. "You raised her without me. You watched her grow up and you didn't think I had a right to know?" "I did think about you. Every single day. Then why didn't you write? Call? Send a damn message? Because I didn't know what kind of life you had. I didn't want to crash into it like a wrecking ball." "You didn't want to crash into my life?" He laughed, but it wasn't a joyful sound. It was the laugh of someone coming apart. "You never gave me a chance to have a life with her." Elena took a step forward, but Daniel stepped back again, keeping distance between them like it was the only thing protecting him. "She looks like you," he whispered. "She said she felt safe with me, and I thought, God, I thought I was losing my mind, but she is mine. Yes." A long silence followed, the kind that settles in the lungs and doesn't let go. Then he turned to Maya, who still stood quietly, confused but sensing the storm in the adults around her. "She doesn't know, does she?" he asked. "No," Elena said. "I never told her." Daniel nodded slowly. Then he turned away from both of them. "I need time," he said. Daniel, no. He held up a hand. Don't follow me. Don't explain anything else. Just give me time. He walked past them toward his truck, opened the door, and drove off without looking back. Elena stood there, heart hollowing out with every second that passed, her daughter's small hand now holding hers loosely. What's happening, Mom? Maya asked, voice small. Elena crouched down. You remember when you asked about your dad? Maya nodded. That man, Daniel, he's your father. Maya didn't say anything at first. Her brows furrowed. She looked down at the gravel, then up at the road where Daniel's truck had disappeared. Then quietly, does he hate us? Elena pulled her close. No, he's just shocked, like I was when I found out I was going to have you. Maya clung to her mother's neck, trying to understand a world that had just shifted beneath her feet. Back in town, Daniel didn't go home. He didn't go to the office either. Instead, he drove aimlessly, through the roads he'd known since childhood, past the river bend where he and Elena had once carved their names into a tree, past the bridge where he used to fish with his father, past the diner now closed, its lights off. Hours passed. Night fell. Still, he didn't return. Claire noticed. She called, left voicemails, drove to his house and found it empty. She knew something had changed, but she didn't know how deeply yet. Back at the apartment, Elena put Maya to bed. The child was quiet but didn't ask for cartoons like she usually did. She didn't ask for a story, just, will he come back? And Elena, with her voice thick and full of fear, whispered, I hope so. But she didn't know, because Daniel Hayes had disappeared, not from the town, but from them. For days, no calls, no visits, no message, just silence. Daniel disappears for days. A violent storm hits the town. Elena and Maya are trapped. The wind was already howling by the time Elena finished boarding up the last of the front windows. Thunder rumbled low in the distance, deep and rolling like something ancient waking from sleep. The radio in the corner crackled with the latest advisory. Flash flood warnings, 60-mile-per-hour winds, stay off the roads. But they were already too late for that. The storm hadn't been expected to shift inland. The forecast said rain, nothing more. But within hours, the skies turned a sickly green-gray and the wind picked up like something alive. Maya stood at the window, watching the trees bend with each gust. Her wide eyes flickered with fear. Mom, is it going to be bad? Elena forced a calm smile, even though her stomach was twisting. We'll be okay. Just stay away from the windows. The apartment above the bookstore was old and narrow, strong enough to withstand a bad storm, but not a direct hit. The power flickered, then went out. Elena lit 2 candles and set them on the table. They huddled together on the floor beneath a blanket. Water began seeping in through the corner of the window frame. Outside, something metal clanged against the sidewalk, and just as Elena began to speak, to tell Maya a story to distract her, there was a loud bang. Then another. A window had blown open in the bedroom. Rain poured in sideways, and the curtains flapped violently. Stay here, Elena shouted as she jumped up and ran toward the back room, her shoes slipping on the wet floor. But the damage was already happening. Water flooded the carpet, bookshelves tipped, something cracked above. Elena reached for the window latch, but just then a gust slammed the glass inward, shattering it across the bed and slicing her palm. She hissed in pain, pulling her hand back as blood dripped down her wrist. Maya screamed from the hallway, and then over the roar of the wind came another sound, a knock, sharp, urgent. She turned. Daniel, soaked to the bone, his shirt clinging to him, hair flattened against his face. He stepped inside like a force of nature himself. No words, just motion. He took one look at the broken glass, at Elena's bleeding hand, at Maya's terrified face, and moved. You have a basement? Back stairwell, locked. Where's the key? Top drawer, kitchen. He grabbed it, unlocked the door, and opened the hatch. Wind rushed in, but the basement was dry, old stone walls and concrete floor. Go, he said, lifting Maya in his arms as Elena clutched a towel against her hand. They climbed down the narrow steps, water splashing at their ankles from the open door above. Inside, the air was cool and still. Elena sat on an old wooden crate while Daniel wrapped her hand with fabric torn from his own shirt. "Hold still," he said softly. She didn't speak, just watched him. He tied the cloth tight, then sat across from her in silence. Maya curled up on a folded blanket nearby, quiet but watching. The storm raged overhead. "You should have told me," he said finally, his voice low but not angry. Elena nodded. "I know. I missed everything," he said, her first words, her first steps, her whole life. "I know," she whispered, "and I'll regret it for the rest of mine." Silence again, but this one was different. Not cold, just exhausted. "I was scared," she added. "Scared you'd hate me, that you'd think I used her to get back into your life." Daniel looked down at his hands. "It's not about hate. It's about time. I lost time, and I can't give it back," she said, voice cracking. He looked up. Her eyes were wet, but not from pain. "I'm sorry, Daniel. I really am." His jaw tightened, then loosened. The storm above began to fade, softening from a roar to a low hum. And finally, he said the words she didn't expect. "I believe you." She blinked. "I believe you were scared. I believe you thought you were protecting her. I don't agree with how you did it. But I believe you." Elena covered her face with her uninjured hand and exhaled shakily. Relief and guilt washed over her at once. Daniel stood and crossed the room to Maya, gently brushing a damp curl from her forehead. "I'm your dad," he said quietly. Maya looked up. "I guessed." That made him smile, just barely. "Smart kid. I get that from Mom." "Obviously." Elena laughed softly through her tears. Then the basement door flew open above them, slamming against the wall. A voice echoed down the steps. "What the hell is going on here?" Claire, dripping wet, mascara streaked, umbrella abandoned on the ground. She stepped into the room like a prosecutor entering court. "This is where you've been?" she snapped. "Hiding in a basement with her?" Daniel stepped forward. "Claire. No, don't explain. I get it now. I knew something was going on. And look at this. You're playing house while our wedding falls apart." Maya flinched at her voice. Elena moved protectively in front of her. "Get out," Daniel said. "What?" "I said get out. You don't talk to her like that." Claire's jaw dropped. "You're choosing them?" "I'm choosing the truth." Claire's eyes burned with fury. "This isn't over," she hissed before storming back up the stairs and slamming the door behind her. "Claire arrives during the rescue and causes a scene. I can't marry someone who manipulates and lies." Claire Brighton never liked losing, and she certainly didn't like losing publicly. But Daniel had given her no choice. The following Saturday was supposed to be the town's charity gala, an annual event filled with glitter, local politicians, and generous donors. Claire had spent months orchestrating every detail, from the flower arrangements to the donor tiers. It was the night she intended to formally announce the wedding date. But by the time she stepped into the ballroom that evening, heels sharp, dress flawless, smile venomous, she already knew the announcement would go very differently. Because Daniel wasn't beside her. He had arrived separately in rolled-up sleeves and no tie, his expression flat and unreadable. He didn't offer her his arm, didn't pose for pictures. And when the music stopped and the MC asked them to step forward, he did so alone. "Ladies and gentlemen," Daniel began, clearing his throat as the microphone whined slightly. "I want to thank you all for coming tonight. Your support of the community means everything. I had planned to make another kind of announcement this evening, but things have changed." Claire stiffened beside the stage. The room, full of murmurs and champagne flutes, fell silent. Daniel looked out over the crowd, faces he'd known his whole life. His voice didn't shake. "I can't marry someone who manipulates and lies." Gasps echoed through the hall. A few people dropped their forks. Claire's hands clenched around her clutch. Claire and I are no longer engaged, Daniel continued. And while I won't go into personal matters here, I'll just say this. I believe in honesty, and I won't spend my life with someone who doesn't. He stepped back, handed the microphone to the stunned MC, and walked off stage. Claire followed close behind, her heels clicking like gunfire across the polished floor. You embarrassed me, she hissed, grabbing his arm. Daniel pulled free. You hired someone to follow her. You threatened the mother of my child. She lied to you. She disappeared for 12 years. She was scared. You were calculating. She used that child to pull you back in. Daniel's voice turned ice cold. Say her name again like she's a tool in your strategy and we're done talking. Claire's face twisted into something almost unrecognizable. You think you're noble, Daniel. You're not. You're just a fool in love with a ghost. He didn't respond, just walked away. But Claire wasn't finished. She stormed back into the ballroom, fury replacing every ounce of control. Since we're being honest tonight, she said into the microphone, let me tell you who Daniel Hayes really left me for. An ex-girlfriend who ran away 12 years ago came back with his child and conveniently forgot to mention it until last week. The crowd gasped. A few people looked around uncomfortably. Others whispered names. Whispers became murmurs, then silence. And now she's the victim. Claire laughed bitterly. Sure. The damage was done. By morning, the entire town knew. Grocery store cashiers exchanged looks when Elena walked in. Neighbors who once waved now closed their curtains. Customers at the diner stopped leaving tips. One woman even muttered "home wrecker" loud enough for Maya to hear. Elena tried to hold her head high, but it was like drowning in a tide she couldn't escape. Daniel came by every day asking what she needed, offering to speak to people, to clarify, to fix it. But Elena only grew quieter. I didn't come back for drama, she told him one night. And I won't let Maya grow up hated for something she had no part in. You think I care what they say? Daniel asked. I think Maya will. Daniel knelt beside her. Then let me protect her. You already missed the first decade of her life. You don't get to rush in and fix everything now. That hurt him. But it wasn't cruelty. It was fear. And the next day, Elena made her decision. She packed quietly, only telling Maya they were going on a short trip. She didn't tell Daniel, didn't leave a note. She just bought 2 bus tickets and started walking toward the station. She had come back hoping for closure, hoping for peace, but sometimes love wasn't enough. And Hollow Creek no longer felt like home. Elena decides to leave again, for good. Maya runs away, leaving a note. I want both my parents. The bus tickets were folded neatly on the kitchen table. Elena's suitcase stood by the door. Maya's shoes were lined up just right, her sketchbook tucked into her backpack. Everything was quiet, too quiet. Elena stood in the center of the apartment waiting for Maya to come out of her room. They were supposed to leave by noon, a clean break, no tears, just escape. But when she opened Maya's bedroom door, the bed was made, the window slightly ajar, and the girl was gone. Panic hit her in waves. Maya, she called, checking the bathroom, the closet, the hallway. Nothing. Then she saw it. A single sheet of paper resting on the pillow. In Maya's careful handwriting, I want both my parents. I'll find a way. Please don't be mad. Elena collapsed onto the bed, the paper trembling in her hands. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She moved. She called Daniel. He answered on the first ring. She's gone, Elena said, her voice tight. Gone where? She left a note. She wants us together. I think she ran away. Within 20 minutes, Daniel was at her door, his truck still running. They split up. Daniel searched the school, the park, the old baseball field where kids used to ride bikes. Elena retraced every step between the apartment and the diner. They both asked neighbors, checked cameras, called every friend Maya had made in the past month. No one had seen her. The town suddenly felt enormous. Daniel drove past the tree where he'd carved their initials all those years ago. He remembered Elena in pigtails, drawing hearts in the dirt with a stick. He remembered promises, some kept, some broken. He remembered walking her home under a pink sky, swearing they'd always be in each other's lives. He never thought their daughter would be the one to test that promise. Meanwhile, Elena passed the bookstore where she'd first taken Maya to buy a journal, the bench where they shared ice cream on her first day of school, the alley behind the diner where Maya had once sketched pigeons. The town was full of memories now. None of them were enough to help. Back at Daniel's cottage, he opened the drawer of the hall table, looking for an old photo of Elena and him, wondering if Maya had come by again. Instead, he found her bracelet, the one she'd dropped during the storm, the one he'd meant to return. It was pink, plastic, worn. But in that moment, it was a lifeline. He held it in his palm and suddenly remembered something Elena once said when they were kids. "When I'm scared, I go where I last felt safe." Daniel's heart stopped. The train station. Of course. He raced back to his truck. At the same time, Elena was walking past the community notice board when she saw it. A flyer advertising tonight's late train. The last outbound route before the weather was set to turn cold again. Her heart jumped. She didn't hesitate. She called, "Daniel, I think I know where she is. I'm already on my way." The Hollow Creek train station hadn't changed in 12 years. Same flickering overhead lights, same wooden benches, same vending machine that barely worked. The same platform where Elena had once said goodbye to the only boy she'd ever loved. Now their daughter stood alone at the edge, staring down the tracks, holding her backpack like a shield. Daniel pulled up first, parking crookedly, not caring. He saw her through the gate, small, still waiting. He stepped onto the platform slowly. "Maya." She turned, startled, but didn't run. He knelt down. "Hey," he said, voice soft. "What are you doing here?" "I thought maybe if I left you'd come together to find me. And then you'd stay." Daniel's throat tightened. "That's not how it works, sweetheart. But I'm here now. I want both my parents," she said quietly. "Why can't I have that?" He didn't have an answer. Behind them, Elena arrived. The second Maya saw her, she ran straight into her mother's arms. "I'm sorry," she cried. I didn't mean to scare you. I didn't want to leave." Elena kissed the top of her head. "It's okay. I'm just glad you're safe." Daniel walked over, unsure of where to stand, unsure if he was allowed. But Elena didn't hesitate. She looked at him, then stepped aside. Together they stood under the same dim light where everything had once ended, and where now something else was beginning. Maya is found at the train station, where it all began. 3 broken hearts. Finally start healing. The wind at the Hollow Creek train station was softer now, no longer biting. Just a quiet breeze rustling through the trees. The kind of wind that carries change, gentle, unannounced, but irreversible. Elena sat on the edge of the platform, arms wrapped around Maya, her cheek resting lightly on her daughter's hair. The last few hours had shaken them all, but now, for the first time in days, there was stillness. Safety. Daniel stood a few feet away, watching them with a weight behind his eyes that he hadn't known how to carry, until now. He took a step forward, then another. Elena looked up, meeting his gaze, and this time she didn't turn away. He sat down beside them slowly, his hands resting on his knees, elbows tense. It wasn't comfortable, not yet, but it wasn't cold either. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted. "Any of this." Elena smiled gently. "Neither do I." Maya looked between them. "Can we try? Just try?" That single question shattered something inside both of them, not in a destructive way, but like glass finally letting in light after years of dust. Daniel nodded. "I want to," he said, but I need the truth." All of it. Elena exhaled, the weight of 12 years pressing against her ribs. So she told him about Istanbul, about her mother's illness, about the night she found out she was pregnant, about her father's rage, the isolation, the hospital, the nights rocking Maya to sleep in a one-room apartment. She spoke without filters, without defense. And for the first time, Daniel listened without interruption. When she finished, there were no apologies left to give, just silence. Then softly he said, "I should have fought harder, looked longer." "You didn't know," she whispered. "I still should have known something was wrong." They sat in the memory of what they lost, what they could have had, and what they still might reclaim. Maya climbed into Daniel's lap without a word. He held her gently like she might vanish. His hand cradled the back of her head. She fit there, perfectly. Later they walked back to the truck together. No decisions made, no promises, just an unspoken understanding that the story wasn't over. The next morning, Daniel showed up with breakfast, 3 coffees, 1 hot chocolate, and warm pastries from the only bakery Maya liked. They ate on the floor of Elena's apartment, laughing at nothing in particular. It wasn't a family, not yet, but it was something close. He started coming around more, not every day, but often enough to matter. He and Elena began talking, real talking, about school schedules, co-parenting, regret, fear, then, eventually, about hope. "I'm not asking to pick up where we left off," Daniel said one night, standing at her door. "I just want to start where we are." Elena nodded. "That's all I can give." And so, they started over. Not with a kiss, with a calendar. Maya's school events, shared weekends, movie nights. Moments layered like bricks in a house neither of them knew they'd still been building. Then, on a Wednesday afternoon, as Elena was clearing out the kitchen drawer filled with unopened mail, she found it. A letter, no return address, postmarked internationally. The handwriting stopped her breath. It was from Istanbul. Inside, a formal envelope embossed in gold. She opened it slowly, read the first line, and froze. Daniel walked in moments later, holding a grocery bag. "Elena?" She turned toward him, the color drained from her face. "I got something," she said. He walked over. "What is it?" She handed him the letter. He read it twice, eyes narrowing. Then, "They left you something." "A trust," she whispered. "From my mother. Property, money. But I have to go there in person." For legal verification, Daniel sat down, stunned. "How long?" "A month, maybe more. And Maya? She has to come with me. They need proof of custody, identity verification." Silence stretched, just when things were starting to feel stable. "I thought we had time," he said quietly. "I did too. But this changes everything." "I know." Daniel leaned back, eyes closed. Elena folded the letter in her lap, the weight of decision settling on her shoulders. "I don't want to leave," she said. "Not now. But you might have to." She nodded, and with it the beginning of something fragile, threatened again. Elena receives a letter from overseas that could change everything. A dying relative leaves Elena a fortune. But she must leave town again. The wind outside carried the first chill of approaching autumn. The leaves on Hollow Creek's trees had started turning, burnt orange, deep crimson, fading gold. Change was in the air again. Inside the apartment, Elena sat at the kitchen table, the letter from Istanbul spread before her, now wrinkled from days of handling. The legal offer was clear: a substantial inheritance from her late aunt, a trust that included property, assets, and a family home near the Turkish coast. But there was a catch. She had to go. In person, immediately, with Maya. It wasn't just about money, it was about legacy. Her mother's final request was that Elena officially accept what her side of the family had preserved for decades. And now, that burden or gift rested with her. But leaving meant more than just a trip. It meant uprooting again, risking everything they'd only just begun to heal. Daniel came over that evening. He saw the packed duffel bag by the door, the strain behind Elena's eyes. "I'm going?" he asked. She nodded. "I don't know how long I'll be gone. Could be weeks, could be more." He sat down beside her. "I understand. But I don't want this to break us," she smiled weakly. "It won't," but she didn't sound sure. "I have a proposal," he said. She raised an eyebrow. I come with you. All of us. We do it together. We take Maya, help you settle things, and we come back when it's done. Elena blinked, surprised. Daniel, your company, your life, it's all here. I can delegate. I've done it before, and Maya's school. She can miss a month. We'll figure it out. For a moment it felt possible. A family adventure. The start of something real. But the next morning, as they sat with Maya at breakfast and gently raised the idea, everything shifted. I don't want to go, Maya said. Elena looked at her daughter, trying to read more in her voice than the words. Sweetheart, it would only be for a little while. We'd all go together. I don't want to start over again. I just got friends. I just got normal. Please don't make me leave. Tears welled in Maya's eyes and Elena's heart cracked. Daniel tried to offer comfort. It wouldn't be forever. Maya shook her head. I like it here. Elena knew what that meant. Maya had never said those words before, not once in all the places they'd lived. This was the first town that felt like home. That night, Elena stood at the window watching the quiet street below, the golden leaves dancing under the lamplight. Daniel joined her. What are you going to do? I can't take her away from stability again. And the trust? If I don't go, I lose it. They stood in silence. Then Daniel whispered, Then go. She turned to him, startled. I'll stay with Maya. We'll hold the ground here. You go. Get what's yours. Come back when it's done. But it could be a month, maybe 2. I'll wait. Elena's voice trembled. And if I can't come back? He met her eyes. Then I'll come find you. The next morning came too quickly. Daniel drove her to the airport. Maya hugged her 3 times, once tightly, once tearfully, and once as if letting go was the hardest thing she'd ever done. I'll call you every day, Elena promised. You better, Maya replied. At the gate, Daniel kissed her forehead, his hand lingering on hers. We'll be right here. Elena nodded, blinking back tears. Then she turned and boarded the plane. Elena boards the plane, alone. A year later, a family is reunited under the same sky. The sky over Hollow Creek was the same shade of late summer blue it had been 12 years ago, the kind of sky that made you believe in second chances. A year had passed since Elena boarded that plane. What was supposed to be a few weeks stretched into months. The legal process in Istanbul was more complicated than anyone expected. Estate documents, land transfer issues, disputed accounts, delays layered over delays. But through it all, she stayed focused. She sold the property she didn't need, invested the money wisely, paid off every debt she and her mother had ever owed. And slowly, she began rebuilding herself from the inside out. By month 7, she bought tickets home. But then Maya got sick. Nothing serious, but enough to force another delay. Then came the issue with the new passports. Then Daniel's messages started sounding tighter, never angry but worried. She promised she'd come back before the year ended. And on the last day of August, she did. She stepped off the bus just like she had 1 year before, but this time there was no fear in her chest. No questions, no hidden truths, just a suitcase. And hope. Daniel's truck was already parked at the curb. He was leaning against the hood, arms folded, the same quiet confidence in his posture. But when he saw her, really saw her, he stood up straighter. His face broke into a smile she hadn't seen in years. No words were spoken. He crossed the sidewalk and wrapped her in his arms. Not urgently, but like someone claiming something he never wanted to lose again. I was starting to think I'd have to fly out there myself, he said into her hair. You were close, she whispered. They pulled apart just enough to see each other, both smiling, both holding back the tears. Where's Maya? She asked. Home, he replied. She insisted we surprise her. Home. The word hit her chest like sunlight. They got into the truck. The radio was playing something soft, but neither of them noticed. Their hands found each other's between shifts of the gear, a rhythm that felt like it had never left. When they pulled up to the house, a small craftsman Daniel had remodeled himself, Elena's throat caught. Flowers lined the walkway. Wind chimes danced on the porch. A welcome mat said, "We're glad you're here." "She picked that out," Daniel said, nodding to the mat. Inside, the house smelled like vanilla and fresh laundry. Maya's drawings were pinned on the fridge. Her school bag sat on the hook by the door. The living room was warm and lived in, with 3 coffee mugs drying in the sink. Elena stepped inside slowly, taking it all in. A door opened at the end of the hall. Maya stepped out, holding a book, then froze. Her mouth parted. Then she dropped the book and ran. "Mom!" Elena dropped her bag just in time to catch her. They held each other tightly, swaying slightly, years collapsing in the space between heartbeats. "I missed you so much," Maya whispered. "I missed you more." Later that night, after dinner and laughter and catching up on everything Maya had done that year, from science fairs to her first crush, Elena sat on the porch swing while Daniel washed dishes. Maya was already asleep upstairs, curled around her stuffed horse. Elena looked up at the stars. The air was cool. The cicadas hummed. A full moon rose above the trees. Daniel stepped out and handed her a cup of tea. "You stayed," she said softly. "I told you I would." She sipped her tea and leaned against him. "I didn't think I'd find this," she admitted. "Not again. Not after everything." He looked down at her. "You didn't just find it, Elena. You made it." A long pause. Then she smiled. "You remember what I said to you at the train station on 12 years ago?" He nodded. "Of course." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I told you I'd come back for you someday." He pulled her closer. "And you did." The final line mirrors the first. "I told you I'd come back for you someday." If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like the video and share it with someone who believes in second chances. Want more stories that stay with you long after the screen fades? Subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss what's coming next. What would you have done if you were Daniel or Elena? Tell us in the comments, because here every story begins on where most others end.